Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling drained, confused, or somehow smaller than you were before it started? Like something invisible was taken from you. Your peace, your clarity, your energy, but you can't quite explain how. That's the quiet damage toxic people do. It's not always loud, it's not always obvious, but it's real, and it cuts deeper than most people realize. They show up in subtle ways. A sarcastic remark dressed as a joke. A guilt trip hidden behind concern. A backhanded compliment that leaves you questioning your worth. And over time, it starts to wear you down. You find yourself second, guessing your thoughts, apologizing for things that aren't your fault, trying to fix things that were never yours to fix. You carry their moods like they are your responsibility. You walk on eggshells not because you want to, but because keeping the peace feels easier than facing the storm they bring. But here's the truth no one tells you. Dealing with toxic people doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're broken. It means you care. It means you've tried. It means you have a heart big enough to believe people can change, and that makes you human, not foolish. Still, caring about someone doesn't mean you have to carry their chaos. It's not your job to be someone's emotional punching bag. It's not your job to shrink so someone else can feel big. Toxic people thrive in spaces where your kindness is mistaken for permission. They push boundaries not because you're too soft, but because you haven't been told that it's okay to set them. And if no one's ever told you this before, hear it now. You are allowed to protect your peace. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to say enough. Maybe you've kept quiet because you didn't want to cause drama. Maybe you've tolerated more than you should because you didn't want to be the bad person. But while you've been worrying about how they feel, who's been worrying about you? How many nights have you stayed awake, replaying the same conversations? How much energy have you wasted trying to explain your feelings to someone committed to misunderstanding them? You deserve better, and deep down you know that. That's why you're here. Not because you're looking for revenge, not because you want to hurt anyone, but because something inside you is tired of the games. Tired of pretending, tired of carrying weight that was never yours to begin with. You want to feel free again. You want to breathe without anxiety sitting on your chest. You want your mind back, your voice back, your life back, and you can have that. Every toxic person you face is not a wall. You are not trapped. You are simply standing at a choice between continuing to shrink yourself to fit into someone else's chaos, or rising into the space where your peace comes first. That choice may not be easy. It might cost you comfort, familiarity, even relationships, but it will give you something far greater: clarity, strength, and the quiet confidence that you are finally living on your own terms. This isn't just about handling difficult people. It's about reclaiming your identity, because every time you let someone's negativity shape how you feel, how you act, who you are, you lose a piece of yourself. But every time you stand up, speak up, or walk away, even just a little, you get that piece back. And the more you choose yourself, the stronger you become. Stay with this message, because what you're about to discover isn't theory, it's strategy. It's not about being cold or cutting people off out of anger. It's about learning how to respond instead of react, how to guard your mind like your future depends on it, because it does, and how to finally stop surviving around toxic people and start thriving in spite of them. By the end, you won't just know how to deal with them, you'll know how to rise above them, and that kind of strength, it doesn't just change your relationships, it changes your life. There's a reason toxic people leave you feeling so exhausted. It's because every word, every action, every interaction with them pulls something out of you. Not just time, but energy, and your energy is everything. It fuels your thoughts, your goals, your focus, your peace. When you let someone drain it day after day, you begin to lose the parts of yourself that matter most. You stop dreaming as big, you hesitate more, you question your decisions, you don't laugh as easily. That spark you once had, it dims, and what's terrifying is how silently it happens. Toxic people don't just attack your mind. They chip away at your spirit until you're surviving on autopilot, functioning, but not truly living. That's why protecting your energy isn't selfish. It's survival. It's essential. Because what you give your energy to will shape who you become. If you're constantly pouring it into stress, chaos, and emotional manipulation, you'll never have enough left for your vision, your growth, your future. You'll end up tired, frustrated, stuck. Not because you're incapable, but because your strength was misused. Every toxic relationship is an energy transaction. And the moment you start recognizing this, everything changes. You stop asking, why are they doing this to me? And you start asking, why am I still letting this affect me? That shift is power. It gives you your choices back. You realize you don't have to respond to every jab. You don't have to justify your boundaries. You don't have to keep explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Toxic people are experts at making you feel like you owe them something. Your attention, your forgiveness, your silence. But the truth is, you owe yourself more than that. You owe yourself peace. You owe yourself a life that's not built around avoiding conflict or fixing other people's dysfunction. You owe yourself the right to be free. And freedom doesn't begin when they change. It begins the moment you decide you've had enough. The moment you realize that you're not here to please people who thrive on your discomfort. You're here to grow, to build, to rise, and that mission, it's too important to be sacrificed to people who can't handle your light. Your energy is a limited resource. Treat it like gold, because it is. Stop giving it away in conversations that go nowhere, in arguments that repeat themselves, in trying to prove your worth to people who benefit from making you feel worthless. The more you protect your energy, the more you'll see clearly, and clarity is everything. It shows you who's really on your side. It reveals the people who celebrate your boundaries instead of punishing you for them. There will always be people who test you, who poke at your limits, who thrive on drama. But you don't have to accept their invitation. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. Sometimes, power is found in walking away without a word, in not replying, in choosing peace over proving a point. That silence, it speaks louder than anything you could say. It says, you no longer have access to my power. And when you stop giving energy to the wrong people, you start having more of it for the right ones. For yourself, for the dreams you've put off, for the life you've been too distracted to build. You begin to think more clearly, feel more deeply, and live more fully. Not because the world changed, but because you did. Every time you protect your energy, you send a message to yourself that says, I matter. That message compounds, it builds confidence, it builds strength, and eventually, it builds a life that's no longer defined by what others take from you, but by what you choose to give to yourself. So ask yourself today, where is your energy going, who's consuming it, and what would happen if you took it back, if you redirected it into your healing, your growth, your goals, because you don't get more energy by running faster or doing more. You get more energy by cutting the leaks, and most leaks start with the people who take but never give, who talk but never listen, who expect everything and offer nothing but chaos in return. You weren't made to carry the weight of toxic people. You were made to rise above it, and the moment you believe that, everything starts to shift, not overnight, not perfectly, but powerfully. The more you choose peace, the more you protect your light. The more you protect your light, the more you step into the life that's meant for you. A life where your energy isn't spent fighting battles that aren't yours, but building the future that is. Once you begin protecting your energy, something powerful happens. You start to see things for what they truly are. The fog lifts, you recognize the patterns, the subtle digs, the shifting of blame, the moments they twist your words just enough to make you question yourself. It stops feeling confusing and starts becoming clear. Because toxic people follow patterns, they aren't random, they're strategic, and understanding that gives you leverage. It gives you the upper hand, not to control them, but to stop them from controlling you. Toxic people don't just want your attention, they want your emotional investment, they feed off reaction, They thrive on pulling you into a cycle where you constantly defend, explain, and prove yourself. And the more you engage, the deeper you sink into their web. That's how they win, not through logic, not through truth, but through chaos. They use guilt as a tool. They play the victim when they're caught. They change the subject when they feel exposed. They use charm when they want something, and cruelty when they don't get it. And if you're not paying attention, you'll keep giving them the benefit of the doubt long after they've shown you who they are. But awareness is freedom. The moment you start to name the behavior, gaslighting, manipulation, emotional blackmail, you stop internalizing it. You stop thinking it's your fault. You stop shrinking just to keep the peace. Because now, you're not reacting blindly. You're seeing the game, and when you know the game, you can choose not to play. Let that sink in. You can choose not to play. You don't have to match their energy. You don't have to prove your side. You don't have to participate in every emotional storm they create. That choice is where your power lives. That choice is what ends the cycle. You don't owe anyone your emotional availability, especially not those who weaponize it. You don't have to be cruel, but you do have to be clear. Not everything deserves your time. Not everyone deserves a response. And when someone consistently brings confusion, tension, and instability into your life, the most powerful move you can make is to disengage with calm and clarity. That calmness is a weapon. It breaks the cycle. It strips the toxic person of their favorite tool control, because what they want most is your emotional chaos. They want you to react to rage, to break down. That's how they regain control. But when you remain grounded, when you speak less and observe more, when you don't take the bait, you reclaim your peace. There is strength in stillness. There is power in silence. And sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is not to argue, not to explain, but to walk away with your dignity intact. Let them talk, let them twist the story, let them act like the victim. Truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to stand. You are not here to convince anyone of your worth. You are not here to keep explaining your boundaries to someone who keeps stepping over them. You are not here to shrink yourself into a version that's easier for others to digest. You are here to stand in your truth, even if it makes people uncomfortable, especially if it makes toxic people uncomfortable, because the moment you stop reacting, you stop being controlled, and when you stop being controlled, you start being free. That's when your energy starts flowing back to you. That's when your confidence rebuilds. That's when your peace returns, not because the toxic people disappeared, but because they no longer have a seat at your table. The game ends when you stop playing it. And every time you choose not to engage, every time you protect your mind instead of feeding their chaos, you rise. You create space for something better. You create space for people who don't drain you, but uplift you. People who don't manipulate your kindness, but respect your boundaries. People who don't compete with your light, but shine with you. You are not too sensitive. You are not overreacting. You are waking up. And that awakening is the beginning of your power. It's where you stop surviving around toxic people and start living beyond them. They don't get to write your story. You do. They don't get to define your identity. You do. Let them go. Let the noise fade. Let the chaos pass. You don't rise by proving your point. You rise by protecting your peace. And sometimes the greatest form of strength is not in how loud you speak, but in how well you refuse to be shaken. Once you stop allowing toxic people to pull you into their chaos, you begin to realize just how much space they were taking up inside your mind, your emotions, your life. That space was never meant for manipulation, tension, or guilt. It was meant for growth, peace, and power. You didn't come this far to be consumed by someone else's dysfunction. You came to evolve, and that evolution requires one thing above all: boundaries. Boundaries aren't walls that shut people out. They are the doors you control. They don't make you cold. They make you clear. They say, I know what I will allow and what I won't. That clarity is strength, because when you set boundaries, you stop waiting for others to treat you right. You start teaching them how to. You stop hoping people will change, and you start protecting yourself regardless of whether they do or not. Toxic people hate boundaries because boundaries expose them. They can't twist your emotions when you no longer bend your rules to keep the peace. They can't manipulate you when you're no longer afraid of their reaction. And when they lose control over your emotions, they lose access to your power. That's why they resist. That's why they guilt you, shame you, or make you feel like you're the problem for choosing yourself. But that resistance doesn't mean your boundary is wrong. It means it's working. It takes courage to stand firm, to say no more, and mean it, not just once, but consistently. Because boundaries aren't something you set once. They're something you uphold daily. They're a commitment to your future self, the version of you that is calm, focused, strong, and unshaken. That version can't exist if you're constantly sacrificing your values to avoid someone else's mood swings. Your peace is sacred, and anyone who disrespects the boundaries you set to protect it doesn't deserve access to it. Don't apologize for choosing your well-being. Don't explain yourself to people who never cared to understand you in the first place. Some people will never respect your boundaries because they benefit from you having none, and that's exactly why you need them. The people who truly value you won't be offended by your boundaries. They will honor them. Because they know what respect looks like. They understand that love doesn't demand self-abandonment. Real connection doesn't thrive in fear, it grows in safety, honesty, and mutual understanding. And sometimes, the only way to know who belongs in your life is to set the boundary and see who respects it. Let go of the need to be liked by everyone. That's not your purpose. You're not here to make toxic people comfortable. You're here to protect your light, and if that light blinds the ones who only thrived in your darkness, so be it. You weren't created to dim yourself for anyone's comfort. Every time you honor a boundary, you reinforce your worth. You say to yourself, I matter, my peace matters, my voice matters. And over time, those small choices compound into self-respect that no one can shake. That's how confidence is built. Not by being loud, but by being rooted. Not by demanding attention, but by knowing your value with quiet certainty. Boundaries are not about punishment, they're about clarity. They don't mean you hate someone. They mean you love yourself enough to stop accepting behavior that wounds your soul. They mean you refuse to be pulled into cycles that leave you drained, confused, and disconnected from your truth. And yes, it may hurt at first. It may feel uncomfortable. You might lose people. But what you gain in return, peace, self-respect, emotional freedom, is worth everything. You are not difficult for expecting consistency. You are not dramatic for wanting emotional safety. You are not selfish for saying, I choose me. So choose yourself, not just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. When your voice shakes, when your heart hurts, when the guilt creeps in, stand tall anyway, because the future you're building can't be built on broken boundaries. It must be rooted in self-trust, self-worth, and self-respect. You don't have to be aggressive to be strong. You don't have to be loud to be heard. You just have to be clear about what you accept, clear about what you need, and clear about who gets to stay in your life. Because when you start protecting your peace, you stop just existing. You start living, and not just any life, but one that feels like yours, one where your energy is yours, your time is yours, your emotions are yours. A life that reflects the strength it took to reclaim them. Keep going, keep choosing you. The strength you're building now is rewriting the story you used to survive, and the person you're becoming, the one with boundaries, clarity, and inner peace, is unstoppable. The moment you choose yourself, something inside you shifts. You begin to realize that the approval you were chasing, the acceptance you kept waiting for, it was never the answer. It was a distraction. A distraction from your own power, because deep down, you already knew what you deserved. You just needed the strength to stop settling for less. That strength doesn't come from others clapping for your decisions. It comes from silence, from the quiet moments when you stand alone and still say, I won't go back to who I used to be. It's in those moments you become unshakable, not because life got easier, but because you got more honest, more real, more aligned with your truth. Toxic people depend on your silence, on your doubts, on your fear of being alone. They rely on your kindness turning into compliance. They hope your empathy will trap you in guilt. But when you break that pattern, when you stop giving love as a way to earn respect, you stop being manipulated, you rise above the game, you don't need to justify cutting off the energy that was killing your spirit. You don't need to explain why you stopped showing up for people who never showed up for you. Your healing doesn't require anyone's permission. You are allowed to outgrow people who refuse to grow with you. You are allowed to change the rules when the old ones kept you small. Every time you say no to what doesn't serve you, you say yes to the life that will, and that life won't be filled with noise and chaos. It will be built on clarity, on boundaries, on peace, and most of all on truth, the kind that doesn't shake when people question it, because it was never about being understood. It was about being whole. You weren't put here to carry the weight of everyone's dysfunction. You weren't made to sacrifice your sanity for someone else's comfort. You weren't created to live on edge, waiting for moods to shift, walking on eggshells to avoid the next explosion. That is not love, that is not connection, that is survival, and you are meant for more than just surviving. You are meant to breathe deeply, to rest fully, to speak freely, to exist without apology, and that begins when you take back control, not over others, but over yourself. Over your choices, over your energy, over your responses. That's where real freedom lives. Not in changing toxic people, but in refusing to let them change you. You don't have to match their energy. You don't have to play their game. You can choose presence over panic, calm over chaos, distance over drama, and every time you do, you become stronger, not in a loud, forceful way, but in a steady, grounded way that can't be shaken. There's nothing more powerful than someone who knows their worth. Someone who's been broken, but still chooses love, not for others first, but for themselves. Someone who's been disrespected, but still walks with grace. Someone who's been drained, but now guards their energy like gold. That kind of power can't be faked. It's not ego. It's not arrogance. It's alignment. You start living for something bigger than approval. You start choosing peace over people, pleasing. And when peace becomes your priority, everything changes. You start recognizing that not everyone deserves access to you. Not everyone earns the right to hear your story, touch your energy, or occupy your thoughts. You become more intentional, more protective. And not because you're bitter, but because you're healing, because you've tasted peace and now chaos is too expensive. The truth is, you don't need more time with toxic people to figure things out. You don't need to keep giving chances just to prove you're a good person. You don't need to water yourself down to be less intense or sensitive. For people who are allergic to accountability, you only need one thing: permission, and that permission must come from you. Give yourself permission to walk away, to breathe again, to start over, to stop explaining. Give yourself permission to let it hurt, but still heal, to feel the fear, but still move forward, because courage doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you act in spite of it. Your peace is not a luxury. It's a necessity, and the more you fight for it, the more you'll see that every toxic person, every draining situation, every emotionally exhausting battle was never about them. It was about reminding you who you are. It was about pulling the fire out of you, not the fire that burns everything down, but the fire that burns everything away that no longer serves you. You don't owe the past your loyalty. You owe the future your commitment. A future where your voice is steady, your heart is light, and your life is no longer built around surviving toxic storms, but thriving in your own calm. A future where you finally stop waiting for someone to treat you right, and start treating yourself like someone who truly matters, because you do, you always have, even when they couldn't see it, especially then. When you finally recognize your own worth, the noise of manipulation begins to fade. The voices that once controlled your peace lose their volume. You stop needing to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. You no longer fight for space in places that shrink you. Instead, you rise, not with anger, but with clarity, not to prove a point, but to protect your purpose. Toxic people want you to question yourself. They plant doubt like seeds, hoping you'll water it with overthinking and fear. But doubt only grows where truth hasn't taken root, and your truth is this: you are not the chaos they dragged you into. You are not the version of yourself they tried to shape through guilt or fear. You are the one who sees clearly now, the one who's done settling, the one who's ready to protect their peace like it's oxygen, because it is. You can't be at war with yourself and still win in life. You can't keep pouring into people who empty you and expect to feel full. The people who constantly drain you are not confused. They are consistent. Their patterns speak louder than their apologies, and it's time to stop treating temporary kindness like it's permanent change. Forgiveness doesn't mean staying. Compassion doesn't mean access. You can wish someone well and still walk away. You can release the pain without reopening the door, because healing isn't about fixing them. It's about freeing you, and real freedom comes when you stop trying to rescue people who are committed to drowning. Every time you allow someone to disrespect your boundaries, you teach them it's okay to treat you that way. But every time you stand firm, you shift the dynamic, you change the story, you stop being a character in their script and start writing your own. That shift may feel uncomfortable, but it's where your power lives, not in reacting, but in rising. Your silence is not weakness when it's rooted in strength, when you walk away without a dramatic goodbye, when you choose peace over proving a point, when you stop arguing and start healing. That's not retreat, that's mastery, because your energy is too valuable to spend explaining yourself to people who never plan to listen. You are not made to be consumed by chaos. You were made to lead yourself out of it, and leadership begins within. It starts the moment you say, enough. The moment you realize that not everyone who walks with you is meant to go with you. And that letting go isn't failure, it's freedom. There's nothing noble about tolerating what wounds your spirit. There's no badge of honor in carrying toxic loyalty. Just because someone has history with you doesn't mean they deserve a future with you. Some people were only meant to be lessons, not lifelong companions, and holding on out of guilt only robs you of your growth. Growth is uncomfortable. It challenges your habits, your patterns, your past. But staying the same costs more. It costs peace, it costs time, it costs your mental clarity, your emotional strength, your future potential, and at some point you have to ask yourself, what's more painful, letting go or staying stuck? You didn't come this far to settle for a life that drains you. You didn't do all this inner work just to return to the same dysfunction. This path you're on, it's not easy, but it's worth it. Because every boundary you set, every toxic pattern you break, every moment you choose yourself again and again, that's the foundation of a new life. One built on truth, not tolerance, on love, not fear, on self-respect, not self-sacrifice, and every day you choose it, you get stronger. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop shrinking and start expanding, and the people who truly see you, who truly value your growth, will rise with you. The rest will fall away, let them. Not everyone deserves a front row seat to your evolution, and that's not bitterness, that's wisdom, because protecting your peace is not about being hard, it's about being whole. It's about understanding that your energy is sacred, and it should be given with discernment, not desperation. You are not hard to love. You are just no longer easy to manipulate, and that shift changes everything. You become more grounded, more present, more alive, because when you stop fighting battles that were never yours, you finally have the energy to build the life that is. So keep going. Keep cutting ties with what weakens you. Keep rising, not to show them, but to honor you. Let your growth speak louder than their games. Let your peace scream louder than their drama, because in the end, you don't owe anyone closure who never gave you clarity. You owe yourself the freedom to move forward, without apology, without guilt, without looking back. This is your life, not theirs, and the more you live it on your terms, the more unstoppable you become. When your peace becomes your priority, your perspective changes. You stop asking why they hurt you, and you start asking why you kept allowing it. You stop analyzing their behavior and start reflecting on your boundaries. That shift from external blame to internal empowerment is where transformation begins, because healing isn't about changing them. It's about changing what you tolerate. You were never too much. You were just surrounded by people who were too little to handle your light. And when people can't control you, they'll try to silence you, make you question your sensitivity, diminish your power, twist your kindness into weakness, but none of that defines you. What defines you is your decision to keep growing, to keep choosing truth, to keep walking away from anything that costs you your peace. People don't respect words, they respect standards. You can explain yourself 1,000 times, but until you act, nothing changes. Action is what draws the line. It's what says, this is who I am, and this is what I no longer accept. That decision alone rewrites your entire story, because it breaks the cycle of giving in, the cycle of hoping they'll change, the cycle of putting your healing on pause to rescue someone who doesn't want to be saved. You are not here to be someone's emotional punching bag. You are not here to fix people who refuse to face their own reflection. Your worth is not a debate, it is a fact. And when you start showing up like you believe it, everything around you begins to shift, not because people suddenly change, but because you do, because your energy no longer entertains what drains it. There's nothing selfish about choosing yourself. In fact, it's the most selfless thing you can do, for yourself and for the people who truly love you. Because when you're whole, you love better, you serve deeper. You shine brighter, but when you're depleted, your light dims, and no relationship is worth dimming your soul just to keep the peace on the surface. Real peace doesn't come from avoiding conflict. It comes from facing truth, from making hard choices, from walking away when staying means betraying yourself. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and for others, is let go, not with hate, not with bitterness, but with clarity and strength, because your healing is not a punishment to others. It's a gift to yourself. It's not about revenge. It's about release, about no longer carrying the weight of people who chose to hurt you, about no longer shrinking to fit into a space that couldn't contain your growth. The moment you realize that your value isn't measured by how much you endure, but by how deeply you protect your peace, you start living differently. You don't chase, you attract, you don't explain, you embody, you don't beg, you build. And people who align with that energy will find you, not because you went searching, but because you finally became the version of yourself you were always meant to be. That version doesn't seek permission to be powerful. That version doesn't apologize for having boundaries. That version doesn't feel guilty for growing. That version knows that walking away isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It's saying, I love myself too much to stay in a space that steals my spirit. You are not obligated to remain loyal to pain. Not when you've worked so hard to find peace. Not when you've cried silent tears just to keep others comfortable. Not when your soul has been screaming for freedom. Your life was never meant to be spent tiptoeing around people's insecurities. It was meant to be lived in alignment with your truth, fully and unapologetically. And yes, it will cost you. It will cost you comfort, familiarity, sometimes even relationships you thought would last forever. But what you gain in return is worth everything. You gain clarity, energy, self-respect, peace. You gain you, the real you underneath all the conditioning and people, pleasing and guilt. That version of you is strong, not because life got easier, but because you stopped betraying yourself to make it easier for others. That's the real power. The quiet, unwavering strength of someone who no longer negotiates their worth. Someone who no longer explains their boundaries. Someone who wakes up and chooses alignment over approval. You're not too late, you're not behind. This is your moment, the moment to reclaim your voice, to trust your gut, to honor your needs without apology, the moment to rise not with noise, but with presence, not with explanation, but with intention, because the life you want isn't found in pleasing others. It's found in being true to yourself, no matter who that offends. Let them misunderstand you. Let them talk. Let them go. What matters is that you keep showing up for you, that you keep choosing peace, even when it's lonely, that you keep walking away from noise, even when it echoes, that you keep building a life that reflects your worth, not their expectations. Because in the end, the most powerful thing you'll ever do is stop waiting for the world to validate your worth, and start living like it's already yours. When you finally stop asking for permission to protect your peace, you reclaim a power that no one can take from you. You stop living for their comfort and start living for your clarity. That's when things shift. That's when people start noticing the difference. Not because you became louder, but because you became untouchable. Because your energy no longer asks to be accepted. It declares its worth without needing validation. Toxic people thrive on access to